Hello and welcome to our zipper pocket tutorial. So I will be working on the DIBY Club Junko jacket. We will be adding these bodice zippers to this jacket. These are pocket zippers, but this method can really work across the board on pretty much any pattern that calls for any sort of a zipper pocket. We won't have a welt piece, so if your pattern calls for a welt piece over the zipper, this won't quite cover that whole thing, but generally speaking, zipper pockets for bags, jackets, pants are all going to be put in a very similar way. You can use this method for anything that you're working on that has a zipper pocket. As you can see with the Junko jacket that I'm working on right now, it's actually a finished piece. Everything other than my zipper pockets are finished on this. So even if you're working on a ready-to-wear piece, if you found a jacket that you like, you can even apply this to something that's already ready to wear. So let's go ahead and get to it. The things you're going to need to do this tutorial, follow along with this tutorial, are pretty obvious. We're going to need some invisible tape. That might seem odd, but invisible tape is really a handy, nifty little secret for putting in zippers. It is a really easy way to keep them in place. You'll still want to have some pins on hand. We'll have our zipper. This is obviously way too long for what I need, but we will be cutting it down because it is the only one that I have available. Then you'll need your pattern pieces all cut out. So I have my jacket finished, but you'll see I have my markings here. This is my pocket placement marking from my pattern piece. Then I have my pocket backing. So this is going to be part of my pocket bag, and it is cut according to my pattern, and then I have added a piece of fusible interfacing. This is a lighter weight fusible interfacing. It does not have any stretch to it, and I have also drawn my markings on this piece as well so that I can match it up with my bodice piece here. So whether your pocket bag is shaped like this, or it might be a really long rectangle, doesn't really matter. Just make sure that you add this interfacing. I know it's a step that seems just like one extra thing to do, but it's going to make the finish far, far better looking. It's going to keep your pocket's structure in place, and it's going to keep the openings from getting really wonky as you're using your jacket, putting your hands in and out of them. So the first thing we're going to do is match up the markings on our bodice, so this rectangle right here on the bodice, with the identical rectangle marking on my pocket bag. You'll want to try your best to be as specific as possible with this. Try to line them up as well as you can, because this is where our stitching line is going to be. I have this marking made in just a chalk, and then this one with a marker, because you're not going to see it. It'll be on the inside. So I have the right sides facing together, if you didn't notice. I put a pin in this top corner of my pocket bag, and I'm going to go ahead and match that up with the top corner of my bodice. Okay. And I'm not going to poke the pin back through on the other side just yet. I want to get another corner lined up first. So I'm going to stick my second pin through this top corner on this side. Then stick it through the same corner on the marking of my bodice. So now I can see that my pocket is oriented correctly. Now I can go ahead and poke them through the other side so that it'll keep it in place. And then I'm going to go around and put another pin on each of the other corners. Okay, now that we have our markings matched up, we'll take this over to the sewing machine, use a regular straight stitch, and just follow all the way around your pocket placement markings, your rectangle. Make sure you use back stitching. You don't want to use a long stitch, just use a regular length stitch because this is going to be your pocket opening. And this is what it looks like with it nice and stitched properly around those markings there, that rectangle that we had from the beginning. So now we're going to do the part that will likely give you a little bit of stress if you have not done this before, and that is we're going to be cutting through the jacket material. Yes, your beautiful, lovely jacket that you just spent all afternoon sewing. We're going to cut into it now. But that's how we have to get it open. So I'm going to go ahead and use a Sharpie to show you where I'm going to be cutting. You don't have to mark this if you don't want to. It is part of the markings that are on the Junko jacket, but your pattern might not have these markings on it. So I am just going to be drawing a line right down the center, leaving about 1/2 inch on either end. And then we're going to be making these little triangles that go from the end of my center line to the corners of the pocket opening. You're going to be cutting through this front bodice and the pocket bag. The big important thing is to make sure you do not cut through the corners on your stitching. If you cut through that stitching, you're really going to jack up your pocket opening. It's going to start fraying and splitting at those edges. So follow the lines that we just drew here, but please be very careful not to cut through the corners. Now we're going to grab the pocket bag and just tuck it right on through the opening that we just created. Pull all the way back to the wrong side of the jacket, the inside of the jacket. Now I'm going to get my pressing mat. And then we want to press this so that it is flat. Okay, now it is zipper time. You'll see from the front side with that pressed, we have this nice crisp opening for the zipper. So the first thing we need to do is cut down our zipper. In some cases, you'll be able to buy zippers for the exact length that you want, but maybe you want your pocket a little bigger. Maybe you just don't have a zipper on hand that's the right size. That's not a big deal. I actually only have this mega long, I think it's like a 26-inch zipper, and I need to use this for my jacket, so I need to cut it down. All you're going to do is start by marking the length that you need. So we are not sewing this on, so I do not need to have the zipper facing the right way just yet. I'm just lining up the top of my zipper, the zipper pull, with the top of my opening. And then I'm going to put a pin at where the bottom would be. So this is about where I need my new zipper stop to be. So that's about right. So what I'm going to do is start by, I always, just in case you don't know if maybe you're going to hand stitch it a little too short, so I always like to err on the side of caution. I have a nylon coil zipper here, so I can just cut right through the teeth. If you have a metal zipper, you're going to have to get yourself some wire cutters and some pliers to rip some of the teeth out to make this cut. But if you're using a nylon coil and many types of plastic molded zippers, you can just cut right through it with your scissors. So you can see I gave myself a little extra room. It's hanging off a little bit farther than it needs to, but we'll trim that down after we've double checked that we made this the right length. So now I have a hand stitching needle, and I'm just going to go ahead and stitch a few loops right at the marking that we made for a new zipper stop. And don't forget to tie it off. Okay, so now let's just double check this before we trim it down any further. I'm just going to flip this to the right side and tuck my zipper underneath here and line it up. Let's make sure that we didn't accidentally make it too short. It's easy to fix if it's a bit too long, but we don't want it too short. Okay, and that is just about right. Perfect. So, if you recall, I trimmed it a little long, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it down a bit more. Now we have about, 3/4 of an inch left over at the end there. So when I lay it on my opening, we have it like so. Okay. Go ahead and do a little bit more. That's better. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and get this zipper put on. So this is where our handy invisible tape comes in. The invisible tape is basically a substitute for pins or wash away tape or any other type of fusible thing. It's just really easy to use. I love using invisible tape for zippers because it just keeps them perfectly in place. Your needles can sew right through them, and then you just peel it off when you're done. So what I'm going to do is start by lining up my top edge of my zipper tape. First, you want to make sure that the zipper pull is all the way to the top of your opening, right here. Another thing you need to be aware of is just check by kind of holding the zipper back like this, check to make sure that the teeth are centered in your opening. The last thing I want you to pay attention to is as you're going, unless you're paying attention, you will find that the center of your opening is going to start bowing like this. You have all of this stitching keeping the edges together, and there's nothing keeping the center point together. So unless you're very intentional about it, you're going to accidentally put in a zipper and have your opening look like this. Probably not as dramatic, but same point applies. So I'm going to start by putting in the top of my zipper pull right there, getting myself a piece of tape. And then I'm going to be kind of pushing this top edge down so that they're not pulling away from each other, making sure that my teeth are centered. And then once I get that top half how I like it, that first half of my zipper, I'm going to tape it in place. Then we'll go ahead and continue down the zipper. Another part I want you to secure is the top of the zipper tape right here, just the top piece. Okay, so notice I don't have any of the bottom of the zipper taped down yet, only the top. That's because I want to go ahead and flip it over now and make sure that I have it lined up how I want to. Now it's difficult to see because I'm using a black zipper, but my zipper is actually a little crooked. The bottom half is a little too high, so I want to move that down. This is another reason I really love using the invisible tape, because it's quite simple to just peel it back and reorient the zipper. Then I can try again. That's better. So now it is centered. I'm just going to fix this teeny tiny edge the bottom here, a little too low, right about there. All right, that looks good. Now that I have it centered how I want it, I can go ahead and tape the bottom edge. You don't need to be so fickle with the bottom now that you've had the top on, but you still want to make sure that this center point isn't bowing out as you go. So we will still have to double check this. And then we're also going to kind of pull the end of the zipper tape up together. That zipper pull likes to keep these ends spreading apart from one another. So we have to be a little bit more intentional and make sure that they stay straight. And there you go. So it looks a bit messy now that it's covered with invisible tape, but after we sew it, we're going to pull it right off. So let's just double check from the front, make sure everything, give it one last look before we sew it. And now we're going to go ahead and start by sewing a basting stitch all the way around. A basting stitch is a long straight stitch with no back stitching, if you are unaware. We want to stay about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. Really, it depends on how you want it to look, whether you do the 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. But either way, if you stick between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch, you should be able to grab your zipper tape all the way around. If you come too far away, then you're not going to grab this zipper tape here. We've only got about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of zipper tape from the opening to the edge of the zipper tape, which is why you shouldn't go too far. So we're going to take it over to the machine and start with that basting stitch. So I know normally when you're sewing a zipper, it's natural to think that you will always be needing to use a zipper foot. But since we have a little bit of space between where the actual teeth edge is and where the stitching line is, you actually don't need a zipper foot for this particular stitch. So we're just using a regular foot as we follow the edge closely. Just make sure you have your needle all the way over, and don't forget to slide your zipper open when you're working on the top edge so it stays out of the way. Now we're going to flip it back over to the front side and go ahead and finish up this top stitching. So we're going to be following along our basting stitch. I like to use a triple straight stitch just because it's nice and chunky. It gives it a really nice look. But you're welcome to use a regular stitch if you would like to, and throw in some top stitching thread or anything that you would like to do to really accentuate the line around the zipper. And that's really going to finish the zipper element of the zipper pocket. Okay, and this is what the finished zipper portion of your pocket will look like. If you followed along your basting stitches straight on top of them, you really don't need to worry about pulling them out. If you were a little bit off of your basting stitches, you might want to take the time to go back with your seam ripper and just pick out the little pieces of the basting stitches that you can see. So even though the zipper is finished, the problem is that now we don't have a pocket. So we need to finish up the pocket portion of our zipper pocket. So this is the other piece to our pocket bag. We're just going to go ahead and turn to the wrong side of the pocket here and line up the mirrored pieces to our pocket bag with one another. This is with the right sides together, and I'm just going to go ahead and pin these two pieces, not the bodice, just the two pieces of my pocket bag together all the way around the edge. At this point, all there's left to do is to really stitch this pocket bag closed. If you're using a woven fabric, if that's the kind of sewing pattern project you're using, then you'll definitely want to use either a serger or a overcast stitch along the edges to prevent fraying. If you're using a knit, like I have here, you're welcome to use a straight stitch, but to get the nicest finish, you might want to opt to use either the serger or the overcast stitch. So I am going to go ahead and use my overcast stitch, and remember, you're not sewing through the bodice of the jacket, you're only sewing through these 2 layers of the pocket bag. And at this point, your pocket is officially finished. I want to show you, before you take off, a couple of little finishing things that you might feel like doing. You might not, but you might, just in case. So the first thing, you'll notice that my pocket bag is a little wavy. Whenever you are going along a curve here, it's bound to happen, at least to some degree. So I like to just take a minute and go around and press the edges of my pocket bag. See how much better, just with that one little zap of steam, we got rid of a lot of that waviness. It just feels better, looks better, and it really just takes a few moments. You'll notice I'm using my pressing mat so that I don't harm my teeth, because my pressing mat won't go beyond onto my nylon coil zipper teeth. So just this little thing makes such a big difference in how it looks and how it feels, really. The second thing you can do, that I like to do, especially when you're working on jackets, is to hand stitch a couple of little tacking stitches at the bottom of your pocket bag to the jacket or sweatshirt or whatever it is that you're sewing. This is just going to keep it from flopping around when you're wearing it. And the last thing that you can do is up here, you can actually sew along this top line one more time, going through all 3 layers. If you do that, you're going to be giving yourself a little stitch line through everything right about here, and that's just going to keep the pocket from wanting to do this as you wear it, kind of sag down like that. So if you have it up, all the way up here, stitched down, then it'll just keep it in place so that as you wear it throughout the day, no matter whether you have your keys in your pocket or your phone or whatever it is, it's not going to be pulling down this top edge like so. And there you have it. You did it. You've got yourself a new pair of zipper pockets for your jacket, your pants, wherever you would like to add them. It is such a fun little trick technique to throw on and add some character to a whole plethora of different garments in your wardrobe.